What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Claims Podcast. I'm here with Jim Pattillo. He is a partner at Christian Small LLP, which is based in Birmingham, Alabama. Jim, thanks so much for being on the Claims Podcast.
Matt, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So you've been called a super lawyer for defense litigation. Would love to know how you got to law and how you got to where you are as a partner and a successful lawyer at your firm. What does the journey look like?
Well, everyone has a story that goes way back further than probably we have time for here. But I grew up in a small town in Florida, just north of Orlando, where my dad had a defense practice for 35 or 40 years. And I'd have to do the math on that, but probably at least 4 decades. And I swore I'd never want to do it, and ended up in grad school at the University of Florida, got a master's in public relations and did really well, but just wasn't super happy with the career trajectory. So I ended up in law school here in Alabama and got into litigation, and I just enjoy the competition of it. That there's a lot of sense that you get from sports and athletics that comes with litigation, and that's been really appealing to me. And I was with a small defense firm for 15 plus years. And then about 2 years ago, had a couple of opportunities, one of which was to join Christian Small, and have been extremely happy with the decision. That firm's growing. We've got a presence across the state of Alabama and in Mississippi. And I've got a great set of partners, and getting to try a lot of cases, and just really enjoying what I'm getting to do here.
That makes a lot of sense. And it sounds like you've had a strong trajectory to date. We'd love to know a little bit on how your firm touches on the insurance world and how you've kind of dug in as an expert in that. What are you doing to date, either in your day-to-day or as a side project or side involvement that keeps you guys at the front lines of insurance?
Well, insurance, I think anyone in business or in the legal field knows insurance touches just about every aspect of our economy. My specialty is in insurance coverage, first-party work, and then we do a good bit of third-party liability work for commercial carriers, and I do some work for some high net worth personal lines carriers, and that involves, a lot of insurance in terms of getting coverage questions and representing policyholders in third-party claims. And that's a bulk of what our firm does. We have a strong creditors and bankruptcy department and some other aspects as well, but insurance is certainly our leading best foot forward, I guess you'd say, in terms of what we do as a firm. Personally, I'm doing a lot of writing. I've written a lot for the CLM group, and my partner Todd Weston and I have started a coverage litigation LinkedIn group. It started on LinkedIn, and we've turned it into sort of a Zoom podcast video meetup that has been growing pretty rapidly. It sort of started once we all worked from home, and it's been a good way to connect with folks in the industry. So that is called CovLit, CovLit, which is short for coverage litigation. So if you get on LinkedIn and search hashtag CovLit, you'll find us.
That's fantastic. We'll make sure to include a link in that for all the listeners of this. We'd love to know, you mentioned writing for the CLM. What is kind of the hot topic or the recent trends, maybe one that you've noticed that is something worth sharing or worth people finding out a little bit more about?
That's a great question. Fraud is the big issue that I've been dealing with, writing on, and I think in light of a lot of the COVID-19 issues we're seeing, there's a lot of prediction that insurance fraud could be a hot topic. If you look at in the past decades, the time when insurance fraud has been at its highest, or when you've had some kind of mass catastrophe, or you've had some kind of economic collapse. Here we have both of those things on a global scale. So if history holds true, fraud is going to be the hot topic for the next few years. I've already been asked to conduct and have conducted a few examinations under oath regarding liability coverage and first party coverage, just to investigate potential fraud. And I've written on that too. I just had an article come out in the CLM magazine on conducting an effective examination under oath, and we'll potentially be speaking on that at their November meeting in Washington, D.C., assuming we're all back to pseudo normal by that time.
Right. That's very interesting. It's funny that you also hear stories of folks on the SBA and loan side potentially returning money and potentially having to return money given the widespread announcement by the government that if there are cases of loans being given where they weren't needed or the need for those were exaggerated, they're going to be including that as a potential litigation or opportunity for litigation. So it's interesting to see how this type of event can cause an uptick in those sorts of things. That was going to be my next question, actually. Beyond the claim side, I suppose, and beyond the increase of people pulling in on their products from insurance companies, do you think there's going to be any longer term changes as a result of what's going on right now?
In terms, well, first of all, the way we practice law, I think, is going to be changed permanently and in some ways improved. I've conducted a lot of and been part of a lot of remote court hearings, which has really been to the benefit of my clients, because I can accomplish a court hearing on a routine issue. We don't want to ever think about trying cases or having significant hearings remotely, but case in point, I was supposed to be in court 3 hours away 2 weeks ago for a hearing that took 45 minutes. And instead of billing my client a full day's worth of time, I billed them a little over an hour, including the prep time. And it's going to save carriers a lot of money, I think, if we can retain some of these efficiencies. Incidentally, the plaintiff in that case had to appear, and she was in Austria, which would have been impossible under the old way of doing things. But in terms of permanent changes in the insurance industry, I think we've seen a lot of things trend towards tech in the insurance industry prior to this time. I know a lot of companies are doing. There's a lot of names for it, but remote adjusting is happening a lot. I've seen a lot of on property damage, roof claims or auto claims or property damage, collision claims. A lot of picture adjusting, remote adjusting, photo adjusting, that sort of thing. And those sorts of things are certainly being, if carriers weren't in that realm already, they're certainly sort of being thrust into that realm. There's a lot of new carriers that are coming online that are doing, they're sort of marketing themselves as tech friendly, efficient, low maintenance. And I think in light of all of us now, social distancing, working from home, working remotely, sort of the social fear of some of those things has been set aside. And I think we'll see an embracing of technology in the insurance industry that may have taken years to come if it weren't for this.
That's a great point. Technology is definitely a theme that's come up in a few of these in the last few. So wondering, do you use any technology that's particularly crucial to your day-to-day role as a lawyer? Just would love to know if it's even just Zoom or other things like that. What are kind of the crucial tools in your tool belt for practicing law in terms of technology, especially in this space?
Yeah, I mean, Zoom's sort of been the hot topic, and they had some issues. We use it a lot. We use it on firm calls. The Alabama state courts have adopted Zoom as their platform for remote hearings, and there were some press about security issues with Zoom, 4 to 6 weeks ago, and they've, I guess, at least to the satisfaction of our courts, have addressed some of those things appropriately. And then I know when you log in to a remote hearing with this Alabama state court, there is a Zoom portal that apparently provides an extra layer of security. And the cell phone certainly has been worked a lot more than it has in the past. And there are a number of other things that we've used. I've converted my living room into an office, or not my living room, our den into an office now. So that's been very beneficial.
I can imagine. I'm curious, do you use any sort of claims management software with the insurance companies, or what do you see that they're using that they're asking you to use, if anything?
No, their platforms are still entirely independent from ours. I think there are some security issues that are concerns of theirs, but I haven't seen law firms use like a web portal, for example, like my accountant would use. He wants us to upload documents into his portal, and then he'll do what he needs to do to get his work done. There hasn't been as much cross-pollination of technology between carriers and law firms yet. The only examples I can think of are file sharing systems. Nobody's mailing files back and forth to each other anymore, so we'll get secure links from carriers to download documents, claim files, and that sort of thing. But I have not seen, like some people have predicted, sort of use of mutual platforms between carriers and law firms yet, but that could be coming.
That's an interesting question. So was looking into that from the perspective of what can carriers take that will improve their operations, what on the software side would be a game changer for them. And what I've heard from folks in their procurement department at these big shops is essentially that the ROI right now is so crucial to that decision in terms of what is going to improve our operation in terms of both efficiencies in the loss ratios and the customer service side of things. So for folks listening who want to approach insurance carriers in some way, those were some key metrics that we've heard in the last couple of days in terms of what's important to them, especially having some form of ROI from either time or improvement in their operational efficiencies. So worth looking out for that. And then a question, you brought up billing, and this is something I've been digging into for lawyers just to help both attorney listeners as well as technologists here understand what's potentially helpful. Is there something that you wish existed in your role now that doesn't, in terms of a technology, or something that you see as an opportunity that if someone could give it to you, you would absolutely, with one wish for this piece of software? Is there something like that?
Well, if you had asked me that 2 months ago, I would have said, there's a lot of things we spend time in the car going to court for that are can be accomplished much more efficiently. So I would have said, let's get on the phone and have a 10-minute hearing instead of driving 2 hours to do it. But we're doing that now. So that's been a real silver lining in the legal world, I think, is some efficiencies that haven't existed before. I also want to go back to your point about metrics earlier. One of the key metrics that carriers have been pushing, and really in the last 2 weeks, I've heard this term more than I have, and even than in the past, is cycle time, especially the high volume carriers, that ones that do work comp or routine auto or homeowner stuff. They want to open and close files as quickly as possible. So, to the extent tech can help cycle time, I think that will be very attractive to insurance companies and claims departments.
Interesting. For those not familiar with that, would you mind double clicking on explaining it in a simple way?
Sure. Cycle time is the time from opening of a claim to the closing of a claim. So, in addition to looking at the metrics of how much is spent on indemnity or how much a insurance company spends on expenses, they want to know how long the average life of a file is, or a claim. That's also referred to as cycle time. So if they can open and close a claim quickly, that helps them be more efficient, opens up more resources, and helps them, especially the high volume carriers, handle the amount of claims they have. And I know defense counsel are in some ways looked at that metric to determine whether they're being effective or not. In other words, if I send this file to Jim Pattillo at Christian Small, is he going to be able to get it closed in 9 months as opposed to 18 months that some other firm. In other words, carriers want to look for counsel that are able to find the optimal time to resolve a claim early for the optimal indemnity payment. And some firms are better at that than others.
Right. Is there anything they're using today to track that? Do you know?
We're tracking it at Christian Small internally. We're able to look at, the first date work was done on the file, and then the last date work was done. And there's some other tools within our billing software that allow us to get reasonably accurate numbers on some of that. We're currently tweaking that now, but it just depends on the claims platform that the carrier is using. I know most of the ones I work with have a sort of automated way of tracking that. I'm not exactly aware of the names of the software, but most of the claims platforms that the bigger companies have a way of clicking a few buttons, I'm sure, and coming up with what their average cycle time is.
Right. I think off of memory, I've seen some platforms from Bottom Line to Wolters Kluwer to Mercury. There's a few of them out there, and it's interesting to see that. It kind of has a rough metaphor in my mind of turning over covers in a restaurant, but as crude as that is, it sounds actually somewhat in line with what that could be in terms of everyone in that ecosystem benefits from those claims being processed more efficiently, faster. It adds probably to the customer service aspect of it as well, although it also does let them process more claims. So interesting to hear that. And if you'll bear with me, I would love to ask some inside the actor studio style soft questions, more to know about Jim Pattillo than anything. And it's a little random, so if you're open to it, we'd love to dig in.
Sure, let's go.
Okay, fantastic. So if you had to say a legal superpower that you have, what would that be?
I would say that a good lawyer's ability to predict the future. So in other words, carriers want to know when they give you a file with a set of facts and a limited exposure, what's going to happen in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, and where along that timeline are you able to optimally resolve the case? And sometimes that means trial. Sometimes the optimal time to resolve it is to say, we're not going to resolve it until we get a jury to tell us what to do. That's in today's, just looking at statistics, that's certainly not the norm and not the usual expected outcome, but the best lawyers at resolving cases are the ones that are going to be prepared to try them when that does become necessary. So predicting the future of the life cycle of a claim and the optimal resolution time would be my superpower.
That makes perfect sense. And then slight variation on that question, what do you think is a key metric or mission to run a successful firm, law firm that is?
Well, it's hard to pick one, but if we're talking about insurance litigation, you've got to have lawyers that know how to and have tried cases. The more effective settlements come from people that know the end game. And we're getting into sort of a era in the practice of law where the larger firms or the higher billing rate attorneys are losing the art of trying cases in the courtroom. So, and the irony is the less prepared you are to try a case, the less likely it is to settle for a good number. So right. That's certainly something that I pride myself on in my practice is courtroom experience. And the lawyers I work with on the other side know that and know that, on the cases that need to be tried, we'll try them and we'll present the facts in a persuasive way for our client.
Right. And another question along the lines of law, but still slightly different. You've been involved with young lawyers in the past. Would love to know, what is the key highlight or maybe a few highlights of what you tell these lawyers, or what could you have told a young Jim Pattillo back in the day, now that you've known everything that you do know today, in order to be a great attorney?
That's a great question. One of the things I've enjoyed most in my career is being the chair of the Defense Research Institute's Young Lawyers section. We had I think at that time, 3,000 plus young lawyers in that group, defense lawyers in that group, who all primarily worked in the insurance industry. So I really enjoyed that time. Two bits of advice I would give and do give the associates in our office: get as much experience on your feet in the courtroom and depositions as you can, because you will separate yourself from your colleagues that you went to law school with, perhaps, or people your age in practice. Look for opportunities to do that. And number two, everyone you meet, from first year associate to law school classmate to bar association, is someone that you will run across potentially 10, 15 years down the road. So remember to keep those people in mind as you move forward in your practice. Keep track of them and stay organized with that. Keep a spreadsheet, keep some kind of way of knowing where people are in their careers. LinkedIn has certainly become a great tool for that, because those people will be the ones that you connect with later, whether they're giving you business or you're able to help them out. But just take the time now as a young lawyer to organize your network and develop it, because it'll pay off down the road.
That makes a ton of sense. And then I suppose one final question: what do you do or like to do in your free time, Jim?
Well, I've got 4 kids from 8th grade to 6th grade, 3rd grade, and 5-year-olds. So between practicing law and then spending time with them and their activities, doesn't leave a whole lot of free time. I coach football and baseball with a couple of my kids growing up, and I've really enjoyed that. And then, when I do get a few minutes by myself, I don't do it as much as I used to, but I play guitar since I was probably in 10th grade, and that's a good diversion for me. So I've enjoyed that as well.
Favorite guitar song?
I'm going to go with Stevie Ray Vaughan, Texas Flood.
Awesome. I've got about as far as Wonderwall, so very jealous.
There you go.
This has been a pleasure, Jim. Thank you so much. I would love to let folks know how they can get in touch with you. We'll include links to your LinkedIn group in the notes to the show. Jim Pattillo, how can we get in touch with you or Christian Small?
Sure. All my contact information is on the website, www.csattorneys, plural, csattorneys.com. And LinkedIn also is just my last name, all one word, Jim Pattillo, Pattillo is the profile name.
Thanks very much, Jim. Everyone, this has been Jim Pattillo, super lawyer at Defense Litigation with Christian Small. Thanks so much, Jim. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you.
Thanks, Matt. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks. Take care.
Okay.